every single time you slag off renewable energy and cheerlead for fossil fuels. Could that possibly be anything to do with the fact that GB News is owned?
No, it isn't. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with that.
Over the past decade, right-wing news outlets have been manufacturing outrage about issues like transgenders, feminism, DEI, immigration, and all things woke.
Can we just leave them alone to be kids and not indoctrinate them with radical gender theory?
We're allowed to say, no, you're not going to Islamicize our cities. No, you're not going to do that. This is America.
My wife's medical advice is that they go to a gynecologist ASAP.
They have created a sensationalist narrative that these ideologies are being imposed on the masses by liberal elites, and anyone who stands up to them is at risk of falling victim to cancel culture.
And the far left agenda has been promoted for the last several years, and it's been kowtowed to by so many on the left and so many Democrats who are in political office. And the cancel culture mob has gained so much strength that they are able to cancel people.
Corporate media then subtly embedded their own political or economic interests into the culture wars, framing them as victims of cancel culture to gain support for those political and economic interests from anti-woke audiences. A clear example of this is the way major right-wing news outlets such as GB News and Talk TV in the UK, or Fox News and the Daily Wire in the US, consistently push anti-woke culture war narratives while simultaneously promoting the interests of fossil fuel companies, often portraying them as victims of cancel culture as well.
So it turns out that President Obama's recovery has been riding on the backs of just the folks he despises. Those evil frackers who power the engine of America's economy.
Should Tom Slater mean, should many have already some people who are climate deniers in this ridiculous space, should we be criminalised for saying we don't believe there's a climate crisis?
Well, our net zero policies are akin to economic suicide.
Instead of being perceived as predatory corporations that exploit their customers and want to destroy the planet, they become unjust victims of the woke agenda. Of course, it should be no surprise that all these right-wing news outlets have vested interests in fossil fuel companies.
It has saved consumers billions of dollars, prevented untold tons of carbon emissions from entering the atmosphere, and almost single-handedly rescued an economy that was in the middle of a severe downturn. You've probably heard of this innovation, not as a source of pride, but as an object of scorn. I'm talking about fracking.
We think, I don't know whether something's happened to meteorologists to make you all a little bit fatalistic and harbingers of doom. Because all of the broadcasts, particularly on the BBC, every time I've turned on anyone's talking about the weather, they're saying that there's going to be tons of fatalities. But haven't we always had hot weather, John? I mean, wasn't the 76, the summer of 76? That was as hot as this, wasn't it?
No. If net zero, the pursuit of the ideology, is so blessed, so welcome, why does the United Kingdom have the most expensive energy prices in the Western world?
That is a good question. The answer is complicated, but the biggest single part of the answer is that the energy companies are ripping us off. So I suggest that rather than criticize renewable energy, you go to the companies that are ripping off ordinary taxpayers.
Well, let's think about that, because Chris O'Shea is the CEO of Centrica, which is the parent company of British Gas, said today net zero will definitely not reduce the price of electricity.
Look, Centrica is one of the companies that is ripping you off. Obviously, they're not going to tell you the truth. Just like I'm afraid GB News isn't going to tell you the truth because you're owned by Paul Marshall, who is a fossil fuel magnate.
And this is exactly what the Telegraph have done with their most recent investigation on the BBC. They took two issues that the right wing cares about, transgenders and Donald Trump, and after viewers were sufficiently outraged about the BBC's persecution of Donald Trump and transgender skeptics, they added Israel into the mix. So viewers started to believe that Israel is also a victim of liberal woke agenda, changing Israel's perception from a rogue terrorist state to another victim of cancel culture, falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit like Donald Trump or Andrew Tate.